Facebook, also on YouTube. You can watch us anywhere you are in the world and leave us your comments on the headlines that catch your interest. And you can also reach us on WhatsApp 08095975805. Also on Twitter, we're there at Nigeria Info FM. Follow us, turn on your notifications, and join the conversation. Let's start with the Guardian newspaper. Senate summons Malami, ministry officials, others over 9.6 billion judgment debt. And this is not going away anytime soon. Banner headline on the Daily Trust also. Buhari says PNID contract a scam to cheat Nigeria. Senate summons AGF, Emefiele, others. $9.6 billion can build Mambila's hydropower plant. This is also a rider on the Daily Trust. If you move it over to the Daily Independent, the story is here and it reads, PNID scam is corruption taken too far. Buhari declares at 74th UNGA. Senate summons AGF Malami over $9.6 billion award. It also makes the banner of the Vanguard. PNID's $9.6 billion award scam to fleece Nigeria, says Buhari. Adds that organized criminal networks acting with impunity across borders warns tech firms, social media against fueling crimes against humanity. Senate summons Malami, others over $9.6 billion PNID judgment debt. That's the story on the Vanguard.
It's here on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Buhari at UN lashes PNID for $9.6 billion swindle attempt. That's from the front page of the Nation newspaper. It comes with a rider. Federal government tenders 13 grounds against UK judgment. That's the Nation for you. A similar headline from the front page of Daily Sun newspaper. Buhari reports UK firm P&ID to UN. Rider says company wants to scam Nigeria. Daily Sun is the paper. From the Punch, below the name plate, $9.6 billion judgment. P&ID case a scam, says Buhari at UN. Rider Malami leads EFCC lawyer Oyedepo. Koleosho, 5 others. From the Punch newspaper.
Let me tell you how this got to the UNGA, folks. So President Muhammadu Buhari seized the forum of the 74th United Nations General Assembly to lament the financial woes the PNID of UK almost plunged Nigeria into, insisting that he will get to the bottom of the alleged scam. Being the 5th speaker at the forum to address the gathering, he also took a swipe at the internet industry, accusing it of aiding and abetting racist and xenophobic doctrines which had the capacity of ripping nations apart. Buhari also dealt on poverty, describing it as a phenomenon tearing nations apart unless something drastic is channeled towards addressing it. Let me quote him. He said, the present Nigerian government is facing the challenges of corruption head-on. We are giving notice to international criminal groups by the vigorous prosecution of the PNID scam attempting to cheat Nigeria of billions of dollars. Rotimi, we put it all on the table.
Well, so the UNGAS, the UN General Assembly, historically is a place where all heads of states go to. They use the global platform to address domestic issues and attack both real and perceived enemies. If you saw the Brazilian president, you'll understand what I mean by
everyone just
by perceived. I mean, the man attacked people who criticized him for allowing the Amazon to be set on fire by commercial interests, claiming that the Amazon is Brazil's sovereign territory.
And it's none of their business.
And it is none of their business. Whereas the climate experts are saying, well,
it is everybody's business.
Everybody's business.
That's why we're here.
Because the Amazon forest.
It doesn't just affect you.
It is very crucial to life on Earth.
Right. Imagine one person owning all of that space.
Well,
one human being. Oh, wow.
So it's in that kind of context that our own president took the PNID matter
right
to So he said some interesting things there about getting 25 million.
We'll
youth,
talk about that at 8 o'clock.
yes, to plant trees and
Yeah.
so he said some useful things, which are quite laudable. Regarding the P&ID, I think what the president was saying is to support the team that is in the UK.
Yeah.
The Attorney General
Yeah.
and the team.
That's like pouring cold water on the floor.
To give them global support.
Right.
To say, look, I've used the global stage to point out that P&ID is a scam.
Yeah.
It's not up to you guys, to go and make the legal arguments. And, well, the president is probably right that there is some elements of corruption involved, but it shouldn't make us forget that there is a systemic problem. There was a contract. The contract was signed by the federal government. Government is a continuum. The two governments that followed the signing of the contract did not do due diligence. The contract was not implemented. The people sued. The two governments that followed did not pay attention.
They didn't look into the details
to the matter.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we now have a current government that quite factually was not party to the signing, but should have paid attention to the court case.
Right.
Upon resumption in 2015.
Yes, they should have paid attention to the court case. So if we pretend it didn't happen, then that mistake will be made again.
But it's good that we're looking into it now, and the president has also tabled it so the whole world knows what's going on. Let's talk about tribunal judgment. Atiku files appeal at Supreme Court over tribunal's judgment. This is a headline on the Daily Independent. On The Guardian, you also find this. PDP, Atiku appeal tribunal's ruling at Supreme Court. Caution against elevation of judges. On the Daily Trust, you find this also. Atiku drags Buhari to Supreme Court over tribunal judgment. And on the Vanguard newspaper, the story is also here. PDP, Atiku at Supreme Court lists 66 grounds of appeal.
From Daily Sun newspaper, banner headline below the nameplate, 2019 presidency, Atiku gives Supreme Court 66 reasons to sack Buhari. Riders seeks nullification of tribunal's judgment. APC, they are on their way to final destruction. Daily Sun is the paper for you. Similar headline coming from The Nation this morning above the nameplate. Atiku for Apex Court as APC files counter appeal. The Nation with that headline. And yes, from the Punch newspaper, sack Buhari over educational qualifications. PDP tells Supreme Court. That's from the Punch newspaper.
Now, some of the judges who were on that tribunal penned down for promotion. So the PDP, that issue came up right immediately the list was out. People say, oh, this looks like, like an appreciation, from the side of the presidency. Of course, now then, it means the PDP and Atiku would face the same people at the Supreme Court, most likely.
Well, the way the Nigerian judiciary is structured does leave it open to pressure or interference by executive either at federal or state level. I mean, the CJN himself, not me, the Chief Justice of Nigeria himself, appointed by President Buhari, said so just a few days ago.
Yesterday!
Yes.
It was in the papers yesterday.
Yeah. So, I mean, APC supporters should not say...
According to Rotimi.
It is the Chief Justice of Nigeria that said it, that the judiciary is open to being leveraged.
Yeah, especially because they didn't have financial autonomy.
Yes,
it said
now,
that yesterday.
If you look at the UK, just yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled landmark judgment against the Prime Minister. They can do that because they have a reasonable amount of independence. Boris Johnson can't do anything to them. He can't have them arrested. Nobody will kick down their doors in the middle of the night, and all these other things that the judges have been complaining about. In fact, I was reading some of the commentaries And people were making reference to 273 years of judicial history. You know, the Nigerian judiciary for the last 59 years has operated mostly under military rule. You know, and those structures have been put there for a reason. The last 20 years of democracy really should have seen a process through which the judiciary gets more independence and more freedom. And it will benefit everybody, you know. As one of my, old associates who is a professor of law and human rights expert was pointing out in an article yesterday, he was saying, the benefit of having an independent judiciary is that it will benefit everybody, because a judiciary that is not independent, if a state or federal government uses it against other people or leverages it, when they are out of power,
it will come back
and need
the
judiciary to
it's
save
a cycle. It will definitely come back.
The judiciary then may not be able to do so.
One of the things the CJN also mentioned yesterday was that no more would it be tolerated that court orders would not be obeyed. Let's talk about another court order. The front page of The Guardian has a story. Court rejects DSS's request, orders release of Sowore. Two writers on this one of The Guardian. Afenifere lawyers, others hail ruling. Why it is payback time for activists. That's another one on The Guardian. Also moving on to the Daily Independent. Hashtag revolution now. Judiciary gets accolade over order on Showore's release. You also find this story across other papers, including The Vanguard. Revolution now protests why court orders Showore's immediate release from detention. That's on The Vanguard.
From Daily Sun newspaper, it's here. Court orders release of Sowore, reject extension of detention. Rider, wife, others protests in New York. The Daily Sun with that story. Moving on to The Nation this morning. Court orders DSS to release Sowore. That's from The Nation newspaper. And similar headline here from the front page of the Punch newspaper. Court orders DSS to release Sowore, seizes passport.
We talked about this yesterday,
Yes,
amongst
we
other
did.
things. When we talked about democracy and dissenting voices. Now,
so hopefully the Nigerian federal government and the DSS in particular, hopefully will obey the order, and not put us through another cycle of the government obeys court orders selectively. All the threat analysis would have been presented in courts.
yeah.
So nobody should call us saying,
And the first time they asked for the ex parte order, it was granted. So
all these people that call and say, well, the government knows something that the rest of us don't know.
They had the opportunity to
and
table
that's why
everything.
They keep people.
Yeah,
all these
in the
things should
court.
have been tabled in court. If the judge has ruled, every reasonable person should be calling for respect for the rule of law. Look,
I was saying yesterday when the CJN emphasized that he would not tolerate disobedience of court orders.
Right.
I was telling Bolan, I said this was around the corner, right? So if there's a court order and it's not obeyed, what really can the judiciary do? It looks like they can't do anything about it.
Contempt now.
What I mean, there are many cases on the table.
No, so it has been said that this present judge is courageous. We should be at the level where it is not courageous to do the right thing under the Constitution. Look, the current president himself has gone to court more times than any other politician.
And that's why we have the courts. You should
if
go
the
to court
courts-
if you feel.
If the courts in the 3 previous elections had declared President Buhari the winner, he would have seriously hoped that it will be enforced, and so will most other Nigerians.
Right.
So it's sometimes baffling, this disconnect, between rule of law and what lawyers are now describing as executive disregard for judicial process. I mean, I seriously hope that, Wale Soyinka always makes this point that if any arm of the executive, federal, state, or local government makes it a routine to disobey court orders, that is an invitation to anarchy. You know, because we've seen it happen globally, where people say, well, they did the right thing, they went to courts, and the executive refused to obey.
And the thing is, for you to go to court, if you took the matter to court, it's because you want fairness. If you then get to court and the case is not in your favor, you should also obey that court. If you had trust in the court to go there,
hopefully we'll get there. But one of the things that the judiciary should be following up with is contempt.
Right.
Because if anybody, executive, federal, state, local government, ministerial, whatever, disobeys, contempt, there is well laid down procedure for you know, issuing arrest warrant for people and jailing them. Yes,
that will be very interesting.
If it then doesn't happen, at least we know that the order has been given and that the person is on the run from the law. Yes,
that would be very interesting.
We'll see them driving around with convoy. But you know what, we'll get to the point. In the developed countries now, a judge issues an arrest warrant
and the person is still walking freely.
There will be people who will stop that fellow somewhere.
The same people that would escort.
These
same people would escort him around.
Particularly now in Nigeria, if a court gives a judgment for someone to be released and the government is holding the person, who would the court hold for contempt?
I think those joined in the suit.
Yes, the officer responsible now, or the person named.
I would like to see that. I would really love to see that happen.
There was a time. We shouldn't forget that there has been some progress with democracy in this country, no matter how little it is. There was a time when you could not even go to court to challenge government successfully. If government violates your rights, as laid down by the constitution, not the rights that you made up in your head. You know, so there is progress. The rule of law is so fundamental to everything.
It is.
It's
at the
rights,
center of it all.
to business, to economy, to developmental issues.
Well, let's see this next story. Pretty interesting comments that people have had about this since yesterday. Buhari redeploys Keyamo to Labour Ministry. This is on the front page of the Vanguard. It's also on the Daily Independent. Buhari redeploys Keyamo, Alasho Adura. You find this on the Daily Independent. I think
most savvy political commentators saw this one coming. Look, Keyamo was prosecuting his boss.
He was really,
for corruption.
that was so funny. And then he was Minister of State under the person
Keyamo
he was
prosecuting his current boss for corruption. Heavy money, not 5 or 10 million.
It was really interesting.
Heavy money, hundreds of millions.
I was actually waiting to see how it was going to function. They were both going to work together.
it's look, no matter.
Maybe it has nothing to do with that prosecution.
No, guys.
Maybe.
Guys, hold on. You see,
because we cannot say that the president didn't know.
Yes,
ahead of time.
Yes, you know, look, we've seen people who have passed on to the great beyond, being appointed to boards of parastatals and other government organizations. So sometimes people don't pay attention to detail. It could have just been assumed that, well, you know, Keyamo is from Niger Delta and that he will swallow his anti-corruption zeal and just work under the guy. And you see, the minister in question is one of the people that critics cite that the current government was prosecuting for corruption.
Wait, which one now? Akpabio?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
That was being prosecuted, jumped switch party, and the charges.
The case,
yes, and the charges, you know, and this famous quote attributed to the chair of the ruling party that if you join the party, your sins will be forgiven. I mean, people keep on pointing out that all these things undermine the fight against corruption. I mean, Google is your friend. Just check the number of lawyers, government officials that have complained about this.
The interesting thing, though, is both of them are still on the cabinet. And, you know, while, Akpabio would not be working closely with Keyamo anymore, they're no longer in the same ministry, they will still be in the same cabinet. And, you know, I don't know if we expect to see frictions, you know, like you were the one who gave me a tough time. You were a criminal.
No.
You think they can work together seamlessly?
Once he's not under him.
Right.
Don't forget what we are discussing on Monday here. Nigerian ministries famously do not work in clusters,
Yeah,
which they should.
unfortunately.
If they worked in clusters, for instance, health, environment, nutrition, and so forth, or labor, employment, youth, education. If they worked in those kind of clusters and they were in the same cluster, there could be problem. Niger Delta, even if Nigerian ministries worked in cluster, is very far from labor and productive.
It's just on its own.
I mean, the real issue, and honestly, I would have given anything to be a fly on the wall. The first day they met, and Akpabio will be trying to rub him on his head, on his back, like a small boy, and say, welcome. I would have loved to see how Kiyama would have swallowed that one.
Oh, goodness. Quite interesting. Let's see this banner headline on The Guardian. Why 2020 budget may suffer delay. Don't we know why already? The three riders here on The Guardian. Senate yet to get medium-term expenditure framework. Vows action on petroleum bill and insecurity. Experts disclose ways to improve nation's fiscal plan. This you find on the front page of the Vanguard, or the Guardian rather. Moving on to the Vanguard, it's also here. 2020 budget. Senate fears setback over non-submission of FSP MTEF document on the Vanguard.
That's right.
Well, the National Assembly has called for the submission of the 2020 budget. Immediately they resume, more or less. Honestly, I mean, the speed at which, even if the executive is going to do something which was once described by someone in the Ministry of Finance to me about 9 years ago as Microsoft budgeting, which essentially is that you do search and replace, you remove all references to the previous year, insert the coming year,
right,
and then you buy everything that was bought the previous year again, whether or not
it's needed.
It is needed. Even if they were going to do that, the fact that there was a delay in the appointment of ministers, the ministers are just there for a few weeks trying to understand what is happening there. Some of the ministers have publicly confessed that they don't know what those ministries really do except what they read on pages of newspaper. Yes, it's true now.
But he was new. He was new on the minister.
So
he was a fresh minister then.
Right. Which goes back to the entire problem about screening people for
specific
without
roles.
portfolio,
That's right.
and then appointing people to positions they don't know anything about. These things are real life problems, and it is systemic. It's not blaming the current president or the current. This is a systemic problem
right,
that the country needs to address, regardless of whichever party is in office. And that's the only way that this budget and things can move very quickly.
Right. Let's tell you a very interesting story happening in Lagos. Protesters storm Lagos Assembly, demand Ambode's probe. This story is reported here on the front page of the Daily Independent. They're asking that he be probed over alleged corrupt practices. This is where protesters under the aegis of Lagos Youth Vanguard on Tuesday stormed the Lagos State House of Assembly, demanding the probe of the former governor. Rotimi, a quick word on this one.
Well, I don't know anything about it. These are the kind of things that I like to read more about before I say anything. Who are the protesters? Are they supported by rival faction? Have they called for probe of former governors? What are the specifics that they are calling for?
Do they have specific allegations?
Yes, I mean all these kind of wild. I've never liked wild allegations. Again, that's why I always concentrate on data, evidence. Rarely give opinion on anything that there is no data, evidence, or no legal or constitutional backing for.
Well, let's say that the protest is welcome. If they have evidence, they submit it, and the probe can go on. It's going to develop.
We'll find out what is happening.
And just to add to it, you might not be able to watch us live on Facebook
we
today.
Apologize for that.
But you can watch us on YouTube.
So all of
Nigeria
our Facebook
Info
fans,
99.3 live.
That's right. Run over to YouTube. You can watch us there. So sorry. We'll be back after this break, and we'll be talking about climate change. Our president made quite a speech at the UN summit on climate change. A lot of things were said at that summit, and we'll be telling you more about how climate change is currently affecting you and would much more. Thank you for joining us. Rotimi Sankore will be here with us again after the break. I'm Wemimo Adewuni.
And I'm Sheriff Quadry.
See you soon.